How great would it be to get up close and personal with the beauty industry heroes we love and admire, and to ask them, how did you learn to do what you do? I'm Chris Baran, a hairstylist and educator for 40 plus years, and I'm inviting all our heroes to chat and share the secrets of their success. Well, welcome to Headcases, and today's guest specializes in professional and consumer product development. He is a 3-time recipient of the Haircolor USA Most Inspirational and Best Educator Award. He is a founding member of Intercoiffure America and Canada Haircolor Council. Renowned as one of the most accomplished hair colorists in the United States, he is a former board member at the American Board of Certified Master Colorists, and he is a Hall of Famer to both the Pittsburgh Beauty Academy and Pennsylvania Association of Private School Administration. He has successfully spearheaded the development, launch, and global training initiatives for color, hair care, and styling brands. He is the author of Formula Boss and Color Conversions Made Easy. He hosts a live broadcast style program called The Formula Boss. And in my opinion, he's probably one of the most and best top hair color experts in my mind in the world. So let's get into this week's head case, your friend and mine, Mr. David Stanko. Well, Mr. Stanko, it's number one, it's been too damn long since I've seen you last, but I just wanted to say welcome to Head Cases, and it's good to have you on board so we can tell them all sorts of lies and stories.
Thanks, Chris. I think last time we were together was Palm Springs, and we laughed, I think, the entire night.
That's one thing I really, truly admire about you, and I love hanging because it, to me, is, there's so much crap going on in the world and our lives right now that just to have a good laugh, I think, is really, really, as we say in English, muy importante. Which and everybody tells me that my Spanish accent sounds more Portuguese than anything.
Nailed it.
Only words I know in Spanish, so I try to use them as many as I can. David, I don't know if anybody that is out there that wouldn't know you or why, but I think the first thing that everybody sees you on stage, and they see you in your podcasts, and they see you in Instagram, and God, you've been all over the world. But I think that one thing everybody wants to know is, how the hell did you get into hair? Where did that come from? Did it start from the beginning? Give us your hair story.
Yeah. So I did not aspire to be a hairdresser.
Me neither.
I did not cut my baby doll's hair. I did not invite the neighborhood kids over and get clipper cuts. None of that stuff. My dad did have the old school clippers, the manual ones. And, we would get those, as my dad would say, give me a haircut, but no chicken wings, right? Like the feathered out stuff. But really, I got into it by luck, I think. My sister went to beauty school, and I saw what she was doing, the head in the kitchen and the pin curl clips and the razors and all of that stuff. And there came a time where I had to make a decision what I was going to be when I grew up. And the whole college thing and all of that fell out of bed. That didn't work out very well. My parents, like all good parents from the Northeast, retired to Florida. And I moved to Florida, but I didn't like it. So I went to beauty school because I saw that my sister did it. And I'm sort of obligated to always say that, she will always take credit for my entrance into beauty because of what I saw from her. So that's how I got into it.
What's your sister's name?
Roselle.
And does Roselle takes credit for your fame? And he would not be where he is today if it wasn't for me going to beauty school.
Well, funny thing about that is, she did cosmetology, and then she went to school for aesthetics. And she moved to Virginia and was working at, I forget the name of the store, somewhere in Virginia. And this woman came in and wanted a bikini wax. And she was so grossed out, she committed to never doing waxing again, got out of aesthetics. Like, she has maintained her license over the years because, as you know, once you have it, man, you shouldn't give it up.
Right.
But she was out. She was like, there's no way I'm doing this.
Oh, there's so many stories I'm sure we could tell in there, but we're going to leave those alone right now because while we're not totally PG, we try to keep it so that students out there will listen to us as well. But so, okay, you got into it. And so where did now, because you were from the Pennsylvania area, right? Before that?
Yeah, so I was in Pittsburgh. I went to school, Pittsburgh Beauty Academy,
Yeah.
and I later went on to be inducted into their Hall of Fame with friends like Brad Johns and Arnold Zigarelli and Beth Minardi. And I started off assisting in one salon, this guy named Jerry, who I've never seen anyone whip a pin curl set in like Jerry. I mean, like, honestly, one-handed with end papers. And he had all of the wealthy old women from Pittsburgh that were shampoo sets or blow-dry weekly appointments. And, you know, all I did was clean brushes and serve coffee.
Yeah.
And I had a friend that worked at another salon in Shadyside, which was a very upscale neighborhood called Reveille. And she was applying color and holding foils and doing all of this great stuff. Her name was Lisa. You know, I often wondered whatever happened to Lisa. But she introduced me to the husband and wife, Donna and Larry Blanchard, at Reveille. I went over and interviewed, got on famously with both of them, and became Donna's assistant. And so I had to go back to Dean, and who was like on the art team for Trevor Sorby at the time. And we're talking about 1987, 1988. And that was a salon I stayed in for 10 plus years. It was a fabulous experience.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing how just getting into the right place can just propel you or stifle you? So, okay, you're in the hairdressing business, and I'm just going to take a wild stab that you finally got out of the assistant role, and you're in your place, earning your money, and so on. But how did you get discovered? Like, what was the? I mean, all of us, and just so everybody knows what I'm talking about, you're a hairdresser. You've obviously went on and you were discovered by someone, and it helped to propel you to work with manufacturers, teaching, etc., and that's what helped to build your career. What was that discovery point?
Well, I started to realize that there was more to do than shampoo, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but at one point I stood in the salon and I looked around at all of these really well-appointed hairdressers with full books. And I thought to myself, it looks like they're punching in, doing a book full of clients and punching out. And I thought, I know there has to be more. So I started to research that. I went to some training over the weekend and started working for a company called Italy Hair Fashion way back in 1990, became a regional and a national educator, and then international. And so, to be direct with your question, I was in Pittsburgh, where one of our mutual friends, Marianne Doherty, lived. And Marianne is a Pittsburgher, and she was also a writer and then became publisher of American Salon magazine at some point. And because of the connection of, you know, Brad and Beth and Arnold, she caught wind of my name and we met, and she did an article on me called like 30 Under 30 or something. I forget the title of it. So I credit Marianne for giving me my first press. And that just from there was this sort of meteoric rise into all sorts of great stuff.
You know, and that's really interesting that you point that out. And because there's this thing when you want to, and I don't want to say that, you know, you can be behind the chair having a full book and that's your level of success if that's what you want. And both you and I take our hats off to that. But there's this portion of our trade that really looks like they look at David on stage and they say, Lord, I want to do that, but I really don't know how. And how would you, like, I heard in there that it was this tidbit that happened where you got some press, etc. What would you say? Like, even though that was, I think you said it was in the 80s at some point, but things have really changed now. What would you advise if somebody wants to take that shift and wants to get into education? They want to get their career to move up. What would you tell them to do now? How should they get noticed?
Oh boy, that's a great question. Things have changed. I used to sit down and do desk side interviews with editors, and I used to actually speak to an editor that would take my words and quote me for magazines and things. That's all changed. But wasn't oh my gosh. But what hasn't changed is the rapport building required with people in order to make stuff happen. Back in the day, I would say make sure you always get someone's business card and learn the difference between assertive and aggressive.
Yeah.
If you're too aggressive with someone on social or too hardcore with comments or too, slipping into their DMs and stalking them, that's a turnoff.
Yeah.
But if it's gently dropped in, like, oh, I like your work. If you're ever in town, could I help at some point? And it's so much easier now in some ways today because you can find someone you like and you see who they follow. You look at the comments they make. You look at who they tag. So you can do a little bit of research. And I think the approach to that person, as long as it's sort of humble and not creepy and weird, can get you a lot of places.
Yeah, and I think that because I'm going to throw this out there. I was having this conversation with my son Lee the other day, and he always hears me say this, and yet I am an introvert. Even though I do, and I am on stage and I do this, I'm basically an introvert. When I'm at home, I want to be at home. I like it when there's just my wife Rita and I hanging out, and so people have a hard time believing that. And I told it to Lee the other day, and he's freaked out because he said, well, I thought you were just BSing me on that and being humble, honest. But I am an introvert. So if people that are out there that are like me, that are introverts, I think you've really got to, you have to force yourself to do it. Would you agree with that? It's not something, if you want it, you just got to go out and ask for it. Otherwise they're going to give it to somebody else.
Yeah, I think part of that equation, Chris, is you have to know who you are first. Mm-hmm. And I too feel the same way. I love being out and chatting with people and doing all of that, but I also love my downtime. I'm not the guy, honestly, I don't like a lot of attention, to be honest. I don't want to walk into a party and have all heads turn and who's that and it's not for me. I'm more of a voyeur. I like to sort of check out the scene. So all of that to say, you have to know who you are first.
Yeah.
And then, you push your own boundaries, and there's lots of ways to do that where you can come out of your shell. I know hairdressers that are fabulous one-on-one with their clients, but they never say a word when they're in a class.
Right.
And that's classic of one-on-one, I'm great, but I don't like a crowd. Right. So you have to know that and then customize it. Like, hey, do I want to be on stage with, 750 people in the audience, or do I want to do in-salon work, or do I want to do, session work, or just do house calls with amazing people?
Yeah. Well, you brought up a great point, and I know that we keep talking about this on Headcases, that our industry has so many different avenues and so many different things that you can be and successful at. And I'm talking success not just from what you feel about yourself, but also financial, emotional, spiritual, for bringing you and yourself out. And that's a little bugbear that I have in our industry, is how people view us, and that we're viewed in a lesser light. Because we're creative, and I think that I would just love, if anything, that people would understand how much money that there is to be made in this industry, whether it's in one of those areas. So, I'm certainly not asking you to tell everybody what you earn, and I'm not going to give out what I do, but I will tell you that there is people out there that just make a very, very good living from working behind the chair, and also from those other avenues that you talked about.
And that takes work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the confusing point for many folks getting into this business is I want to get my license, get a cute black outfit and a new pair of shears, and make $100,000. So, there's classic stuff you can't get away with. Some folks are really lucky and that happens, but you have to do the time. If you want to be competent and if you want to have success for the long haul, like you're in this for real, this isn't just like a funsy thing you're going to do on the weekends. You got to put the time in.
Yeah.
And the time is education, online learning, following people, playing with different hair color lines. All of that stuff is the work you have to do.
And that's the point I think that there's out there, is that for people that, and I want to get your advice from, if people really want to get into the educator game, some things that we can talk about. And here's one thing that comes to the top of my brain, is that if people want to get into education, and if that can be just, I want to teach in my salon, I want to help other educators grow, I want to help the associates, apprentices grow, is that they have to look at it that education is a different profession than haircutting and hair color and all of the other things that we do. It's a different, it's really, in essence, it's teaching, and to learn how to teach is really different. Because I'll tell you, when I first got into it, I got into it just by luck, and it was, I'll just say it was a few years before the 80s. But the reality was, I was in a competition and people said, "Hey, you can do hair. Do you want to come work for our manufacturer?" And I said, "Sure," because I thought it was there. And my ego got really big until I got on stage and understood that I couldn't teach my way out of a wet paper bag. And that was very obvious by people leaving the room. I want to hear what your take on that would be. But mine is just that you've got to learn how to teach, and it's just one step at a time. Just the same way as you, if you don't want to get on stage, you could have been, you had trouble with your first haircut, your first hair color, your first balayage. It's the same thing when you're teaching.
Boy, that you just gave me a lot. I'm not sure if I can dissect back and hit some key points, but here's what came up for me. When I moved from one salon to the other in Pittsburgh, and as I mentioned, I knew there was more than just shampooing. I started to put together the policy and procedures and a training manual and how to do a great shampoo. That stuff was interesting to me. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, because it was fresh from what I learned in beauty school. There's a procedure for things to get a great outcome. So I started to get my feet wet there. What I learned, which I thought was key, is not everybody appreciates that. Not everybody wants to be, I'll say told what to do, or as we say today, share, or suggested, or let me coach with you. Not everybody is into that. And that requires both a learner mindset as well as a teacher mindset. And similar to what you said about your experience, about you did great stuff in a competition, I remember back, I think it was 1990, it was the International Beauty Show in New York City. I was working for Italy Hair Fashion, and I got on stage, and it just came to me. I just felt like I knew how to connect with an audience. And I'll never forget when I walked off stage, Jim San Germano, who I'm still friends with to this day, said to me, "I hope you like traveling because you're pretty good up there and we're going to put you on the road."
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm on to something.
Yeah.
I'm on to something.
I loved that the word that you said there that I want people to think about is connect. And, I wasn't there. I wish I was, but I'll relate to you what happened to me, and I'll bet that's what happened to you. Is every time that I would go on stage when I first started, I would watch people like Martin Parsons, and the next time that I would go on stage, I would be Martin Parsons. Or I would watch Dwight Miller, and I would be Dwight Miller. And then whoever the flavor was that I saw last, that's who I tried to imitate. And I would have to think about it before I got on stage. And I'll never forget the time I went on stage, and I didn't have time to think about who I wanted to be. I just had to be me, and I got a better response. And I went, wow, I guess this is a heck of a lot easier. And I know in training that we talk about, it's just called being authentic. And I'll bet you that
Yeah.
happened to you.
It did. It did, with a little twist of a variation. Oh boy, Chris, this is such a great conversation here. It sort of ties into, do you have mentors and who are they? And it also ties into, years ago, I had this travel agent who was ex hairdresser turned travel agent. And he was talking to me about, oh, you're in Pittsburgh and in these salons, how's it going? And we were chatting, and he said, are you assisting? And I said, indeed I am. And he said, here's the best advice I'm going to give you. Assisting is the best thing to do because you often learn what not to do more than what you learn
To do.
what and how to do.
Yeah.
And that has stuck with me over the years. So when you said you're sort of taking and the flavor of folks you just saw in order to get on stage and do that, I have, and that ties into like, who are some of your mentors? You know, I have a tough time with who is your mentor because I don't have one person, but I'm an observer, I'm a voyeur. So I would check out all these people and I would think that worked for them, that didn't work for them. The audience responded to that and not that. Ooh, they were really aggressive right there. And I don't like that. That doesn't feel part of me. And I think all of those observations crafted me into what I enjoyed doing from an authentic standpoint on stage.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really it. Because it's all a learning game, isn't it? It's same amount of time that we had to put into learning and how we grew and we involved with our hairdressing craft, our beauty craft, whatever that might be. It's the same thing for teaching. You have to become an observer. I love that. Okay, so we got from hair. You were in the salon. You're in the education. Now I wanted you have had probably one of the best corporate lives I've seen in our industry. And let me qualify that because some people not know what I'm talking about. Still have a quasi corporate position. No, I'm not a part of. I don't. They sign a check for me as a contracted artist, but I'm not, an employee thereof. But you've had this amazing rise where you went from education, and then all of a sudden you became the guru of the person to talk to when it came to color, hair care, etc. Tell us a little bit about what that was like, the transition of when you went into from the hairdressing world of behind the chair on stage, and you were still on stage even when you were in your corporate life. What was that like? What was that like for you? What was the transition like? And or maybe even top line first, what were some of the responsibilities when you get into a corporate world? And David now starts work for a manufacturer and they say, David, here's what we expect from you.
Yeah, it's a different game for sure. The hairdressing world, you can make off-color jokes, you can be dumb, you can, do all of that crazy stuff that you do in the salon with your fellow hairdressers. Can't do that in the corporate world. It is not appreciated. It is frowned upon. Sarcasm works with your clients and your colleague, does not work when you're in a business meeting with other executives. It is just simply not appreciated. And that was something I had to learn. Yeah. Because I had reached a degree of success and people booked me and liked me and appreciated me for what I brought to the table. And I had to refilter all of that in a way that a new audience, which were college grads, marketing, chemists, the leadership teams, would also now take me serious and appreciate my input. The value I always brought was that I had boots on the ground. I was a hairdresser. I worked with those products. I understood them. And so I felt I could speak in the first person about who that consumer is, which was me.
Yeah.
But it's tough. It's tough. Being inside is tough.
Yeah. I don't think I ever had that level of involvement that you did, but I remember having to move to New York and having an office which I just went, oh my God, it's like, I don't know how anybody gets any work done, because when I had an office there, people would come by and they would just, can you come into this meeting? Or, hey, what do you think about this? And I couldn't get any of my work done, which meant you were working after hours. But what I love that you said, and what I think is so important in our industry, is to have hairdressers that had boots on the ground, as you said, in the corporate world, because you literally were the link between those of us out there as a hairdresser and the corporate world, to know that you stood for us. You were the reality check between marketing and what they wanted to put out, or what people wanted a product to do, and the reality of what you knew that capability was. So was that hard to get that message across to people? Was it, and at what point did all of a sudden they say, okay, God, I got it. Okay, David said so.
You know, I don't know, Chris. I don't know that ever gets across. I think it depends on how savvy the marketers are that you're working with. And you and I have worked a long time for the L'Oreal Group, Redken being the brand we both worked with. L'Oreal has some very smart and savvy marketers. They get it. They know the demographics and the audience, and they know how much. I mean, they know all of that stuff. And because they're young and aggressive, they're interested to learn more about hair color, for example. There are brands that I've worked with that the marketers, they don't get it. They don't color their hair. They don't go to a spa. They don't get manicures. They might as well be marketing trees at Home Depot as opposed to beauty and fashion. And it's a very nuanced discipline to get into hair care and styling and beauty.
Yeah. Well, and so, because I know that, and I think we both appreciated all of. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned in corporate wise, I'll never forget. At one time, Tim Forberger was. I think he was in charge of education at the time, and I believe it was Pat Parente that was the general manager at the time, and Tim came in arguing on my side of why this particular thing should happen. What happened there wasn't important right now, but I'll never forget that Pat looked at Tim and he said, okay, Tim, I'll do what you say, but next time you come in asking something like that, I want you to look at your check and I want you to see whose name is on the top of that check and who you should be fighting for. and that always stuck with me. And to this day, I'm still grateful every time I see that check with that manufacturer name on there, because let's face it, without them, they provide a lot for the hairdressers in the industry and for you and I as well. So go ahead.
Well, I was going to just mention some brands have a very specific love for education. They get it, they appreciate it, and other brands think education is secondary or third to their success. And look, you and I both grew up knowing that education is a product. Education is supportive sales. Education is who our audience is. And everything else surrounding it is the bells and whistles or the icing on the cake. But, education is key, still is today. But boy, has it taken a turn today, huh? I mean, I still am. I don't know. It gives me pause when I think about how we define education today. And over the past few years, we've taken a lot of hits. COVID put us out of the game. There were how many students that graduated beauty school virtually? They didn't get to do a haircut with coaching. And so that changed the game dramatically. But, some of those pillars just don't change, which is I have your best interest in mind. I'm sorry, this is a bit of a rant, but I want to get this out for a second. There are so many of us on these platforms that love education, and we do it because it's our passion and it's in our DNA. So what I want to say to everyone is be nice.
Yeah.
Be kind. Don't make jerky remarks, because these people, they're not monetizing any of this content. They're not getting paid typically from a brand. They might get a free bottle of shampoo. I mean, some do, of course, but a lot don't. These are folks that want to do education on the platform because it's what they love. You don't like what they say. It's like a dating app. Swipe left.
Yeah. 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 And it's just, wouldn't it be nice if whatever, wouldn't it be nice no matter where we're at, whatever we do, when we're on, well, not only on a stage, but just talking in real life, if we could just leave some of the clutter and the divisiveness that's going on and just be nice, for God's sake. It would make our world just so much better.
Seriously.
Yeah. I mean, do your, I call it pissing and moaning. Do your pissing and moaning at home in the privacy with your family, but when you're out there, be nice. I want to jump in because I want to make sure we get a chance to talk about sort of the next stage that we've had in your life. And I want to talk about, Formula Boss. And
yeah.
so, I started podcasting. Yours, explain to us, would you classify yours as a podcast? Is it a webinar? Because you have a whole bunch you don't just deal with beauty related. You do, but there's still, you have a diversity that goes on in there. Tell us, first of all, what it is, and then give us a little bit more about why you started it and what's the gist on it. This episode is sponsored by the Salon Associate Accelerator from trainersplaybook.com. Are you struggling with the time and cost of associate training? Do you feel like your salon is running you? We'll get your associates on the floor, all with 90% less time from you, so you can get back to building your business. Get them world-class design, finishing, color, and client care skills they'll use every day for the rest of their career, while you focus on realizing your vision. Go to trainersplaybook.com and get the Salon Associate Accelerator. And now, back to the show.
Okay. So Formula Boss is a trademark name. It's a moniker. So I own the trademark on that. Mm-hmm. And I've had it for years and years. But over the course of the past few years, I worked with brands that I held it back with because it was something I wanted and I didn't want to exploit it with some of the brands that I worked with. And it occurred to me over the past 6, 8, 10 months, you started this podcast saying, oh, lots of people know who you are. I don't know about that anymore, Chris. Huh. If you Google me, a ton of press comes up, but it stops around about 2019, because that's really when the change happened from magazine stuff into social media stuff. Yeah. And I wasn't in a salon full time, so I couldn't constantly produce content that I posted, makeovers, before and afters. The models and folks that I worked with brands, I wasn't allowed to post about. Right. I couldn't do any behind the scenes stuff. So the Formula Boss sort of sat dormant for a while. And then several months ago, I separated from a big brand I was working with, and I realized, hey, I need to get my name out there again. So I relied on Formula Boss. I started doing this interview series, which I've come in and out of over the years because I think it's fun. Like you doing a podcast, it's fun to connect with people and have conversations. And, we know a lot of people. And I thought, I'm going to call on the people I know. Yeah. And I think what's fascinating as a hairdresser, we know people from every walk of life, right? Yeah. Yep. Unlike another profession where it's just the same customer all the time. We all know so many diverse types of people. And so I thought, I'm known for hair color. I'm known for beauty and product development. So I'll try to kick that off. But then I also want to do some interesting stuff. So I may take it into a proper podcast format at some point. But right now I drop it on Instagram and Facebook and occasionally on LinkedIn. And I've interviewed, I think, 7 people so far. I kicked it off with a hair color chemist because that's fascinating. Yeah. And then my friend Brad Johns, who's the OG celebrity colorist from New York City. a hair care chemist where we talk about bonders and silicones and those things. And then I thought, I'm going to call my friend Spencer, who is a retired gay porn star, and I'm going to talk to him because he talks very candidly about mental illness and drug addiction and
Wow.
unaliving himself and rehab. And that's stuff that we've all been part of, either directly or clients or colleagues. And I thought, this is fascinating that he
Yeah.
wants to just be so out there with it. And I think one of the ones that I just dropped is a friend of mine, Gilbert King. Do you remember Gilbert King?
Yeah, because we did some work with him.
Yeah. So he was fashion photographer. He did a lot of behind the scenes shooting and stuff for many of us in New York. And now he is in this true crime podcast world, and he's authored 3 books. And I interviewed him recently when a case he had been working on for 5 years, the guy was released from prison after 36 years of incarceration for a crime, a murder he didn't commit.
Wow.
So the true crime podcast, it's one of the biggest genres right now on all, Netflix and Prime and all of that, because people are fascinated by it. So I wanted to branch out using Formula Boss. What is your formula for success? What is your formula for disappointment? And talk to all these people. So it's been great fun and well received, and I'm going to keep going with it.
Good. I see. I think that's what's so interesting in this is that because, like, for me, and I'll be honest with you. I think I'd be terrified and I take my hat off you because I think I'd be terrified to talk to other people about things that I know nothing about. And I'm not saying you don't. I know you're not a criminal, but I'm sure that it's easy to have that conversation of where it went from. But I take my hat off to you on that. Again, my insecurities. I just want to be in an environment where people know and I know the topic, etc. But you're giving me ideas because especially when it comes to mental illness, there's a gentleman that I was given lead on out of Ireland who is a hairdresser, but went through all sorts of depression and blah, blah, blah. And I want to have him, I want to get him on to talk about all of that because I think there is so much of that's going on in our lives right now. Because I can honestly say when COVID was getting over with, I don't say I was depressed, but I found myself getting caught up in negativity again, and I think that that's just a mental well-being state. So I think the more that you and other people can help by just letting people hear what it's happened to other people.
Well, you mentioned earlier about the beauty biz takes you in a lot of different directions. There's a lot to do. I wouldn't have met these people if it weren't for my position in the beauty biz.
Yeah.
And all of the folks that I talk to, we do talk about beauty. Like Spencer Quest was his stage name, the gay porn star. We talk about grooming on set. And he taught me this trick. He said, I have a very hairy chest. So, you clipper this way on your chest, but your abs, you come to the center with the clippers. That way it looks more natural. And I thought, I'm going to post about a clipper cut tip from a retired gay porn star. I mean, how amazing is that?
Oh, wow. I just think that, but to your point, we meet so many interesting people in our lives that, maybe I'm just, I'm trying to be too narrow focused just on hair, but I'm sure that maybe one time I'll have to have me getting on with having a retired gay porn star, it probably would baffle me a little bit, and I might stammer a little bit too much. I'm stammering now, even thinking about it. So we've got you on now. Right now, we've got the Formula Boss is coming to life, and I want to talk just a little bit more, just about how this has transpired and how this has helped to, either has it changed you? Like, do you find that I'm not, change isn't the right word, evolved? How is being in the beauty business, has this evolved you as a human being? Have you changed in any way that this has helped you along? What would you say to that?
Ooh, that's deep. I think beauty does change. Well, I can't say all of us. I'll first person this. Beauty has changed me.
Yeah.
How so? I don't, this is going to sound stupid, but I'm going to say it. I don't think I look my age. I think that because I've been around beauty and skincare and good products, and exposed to my clients who are into yoga and Pilates and personal training and good diets and meditation, all of that has influenced me so that I take on some of that to what I think is self-improvement mode.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that part has worked. And also, dealing with the general public is not easy at all. We see all of these crazy TikToks and Instagrams of all of the people losing their shit at Walmart and the Karen behavior and on airplanes and all of that. That was sort of not prevalent for a while. But now it's like the whole world's been green lighted to just be that person. And it comes into the salon. I still work in a salon here in West Hollywood in Los Angeles. And we see on occasion, there's some stuff where I just shake my head like, what did you just say to me? What?
Yeah.
What? So how has that impacted me? My listening skills have improved. And I think that people, when they're paying me for my opinion and to solve problems that they have, gray hair, etc. But they're paying me to listen. I let them set the pace. It's not the David show in the salon. I just, look, you don't want to talk? We won't talk. You want to talk? I'll listen. So I think that's listening is a lost skill, and listening is something that I believe we could stand with a little bit more of.
Yeah. There was this book. I don't even know if it's in publication anymore. And it's called Winners and Losers. And there was so many, it was just like a small book, half the size of a normal book. And it was just one quote on each page. And he would talk about winners and losers. And I'll never forget this one based on what you just said. He said, winners listen and losers wait for their turn to talk. And I think that really epitomizes what you were just talking about, that active listening is just really listening to what the person is saying. And sometimes even if you have to respond, what's really the question behind the question that they're really asking?
Okay, so I'm going to curse you.
Go ahead.
Did I interrupt?
No, I was jumping on you there.
So I want to curse you and everyone listening to the following. There's a character on Saturday Night Live that Kristen Wiig does called Penelope, and she is the one-up girl. So if you say, Chris, I broke my leg today, your response will be, I broke both of my legs, and I did it yesterday. So I did it before you did, and it's worse than you. And there is this weird Penelope curse, and I can't unhear it. I have clients that, I'll start talking to, and if they say, how are you? And if I say, I'm not feeling so great today. I'm not feeling well either. My stomach's upset and I had food poisoning. And then I just turn off because I think no matter what I say, you're not listening to me. You're just going to one-up me and all of that. So I call that the Penelope syndrome, and it's sort of prevalent today.
Yeah. And to that point, I also feel that, like, for at least from my part, that how the beauty industry has changed me is that I used to be, I'll just be honest, I was a bit of an asshole when I was a kid, because I trained, I've told this story before, so bear with me if you've heard me say it. But I know that there's areas of the country that won't hire me because the teachers that I had, put part of their teaching was to put down the student. And because you teach how you're taught, I did that, a lot of that at the beginning of my career. And I had to learn that it might work for some people, but very few. And you can do a lot better by coaching somebody along and being nice and kind to them at the same time as you're coding it with some instruction. That what the beauty industry has done for me is, as my evolution has happened, I've become better at listening. My mindset has changed. My attitude has changed. That it's not just about me when I'm talking, etc. So, sort of to that question that we were just both of us were dealing with, is how the growth in the industry and beauty industry can change you, and even corporate life. That when you do that, all of that helps us grow. And I'm grateful for it, because I'm a bit of a different person now. I still could be an asshole on occasion. I'll put that out there. And people who are listening go, yeah, you're right. I was there when that happened.
That's right. Well, I don't know, man. You never know how these like chats are going to go, and what I appreciate is the honesty in our conversation.
Yeah.
And for those that have made it this far listening, thank you. But that's also, to sort of the summation of teaching and listening and active listening. You got to stand the test of time. Listen to 60 minutes, and maybe 15 minutes will be relevant to you, and that will maybe influence you. So I don't know. I know it's a little non sequitur, but I wanted to throw that in.
Yeah. So I want to jump into, like, we're started on it a bit, is more the David, the human being. Because, like, we've been good friends for years, and I always so do admire you, etc. But what would you say is, like, what was the proudest moment? And I'm just going to say in life, but it might be in career, it might be whatever. But what are some of the proudest moments that you've had?
I think one would be moving to New York City. Sort of, the process wasn't easy, but it happened. New York is a tough city. It has its own spirit. It has its own energy, but it's a tough city. But once she embraces you and you're in, it's true. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. So I would say moving to the city was one of my proudest moments.
Yeah, it is an amazing feeling when you can walk around, and where as a visitor you say, well, I'm going to be leaving it. But when you live there, I never forget walking in Washington Square Park with my wife Rita, and just going past that monument was on the front of Friends. For those of you listening and don't know what that is, it's an old TV program. And saying, "Damn it, we live here." It's pretty intense feeling, and I do love the time that I lived there. I don't anymore, but I found I was getting a little too hard, so we moved out. What would you say is, if you had the most difficult moment in your life?
I think when my mother passed.
Oh,
Yep. That was in 2014. My dad passed in 2008. And one of the last things he said to me was, "You're my only son, and it's all up to you now." And the second thing he said is, "You're going to have your hands full with your mother." And boy, did I. But when she passed, I took it really, really hard.
yeah.
And I think in life, I was in a relationship at the time. My mother passed. My partner had this horrible accident. And I think that those things either pull you together or rip you apart. And in that particular example, it just ripped me apart. There was just it set me on a pathway for a couple years, which was really unhealthy.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw, hi, my name is Chris, and I view TikTok. But I remember seeing on TikTok, or it might have been Instagram or one of the other genres, but I loved this little saying that this gentleman had on grief. And he gave just a picture of an analogy of what grief is like, because he said, everybody thinks the grief, like when your mom passes or a traumatic thing happens in your life, and you carry this grief. And he showed a picture of a black ball inside a small fishbowl. And he said that that's what your life is the fishbowl, and the grief seems to encompass your life. And he said what he disagrees with, that everybody says time will cure all and it'll make the grief go away. And I thought what he said was just perfect. He said, look, at grief doesn't go away. And he showed just another illustration of the grief, the same size. The only thing is the fishbowl was way bigger. Wow. He says the grief's still there, but it's the grief is sort of caught up, and it's still there, but everything else is going on around you, which make it seem less. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. I'm sorry you had to go through that. That's tough times. I want to sort of jump into what we call our rapid fire segment right now. But before I jump into that, I want to say, like, if people want to get a hold of you, because I mean, you still go out and teach and train, and if people want to get a hold of you and book you in for something, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so on Instagram, it's the David Stanko. And on all other social stuff, it's David Stanko on Facebook and on LinkedIn. And on TikTok, it's Formula Boss.
Yeah, and that's Stanko, right?
That's right.
And okay, so I just want to run through. This is just quick rapid fire stuff. First thing that comes to your brain. Okay, what turns you on in the creative process?
Oh my God. What turns me on in the creative process? That if I'm working on a client, they're equally as excited.
And what stifles the creativity?
Micromanagement.
Oh, yeah. An event or a show that you did I'm told there's many, but the one that comes out to your mind that you just loved?
Oh, Redkin Symposium, doing a Q&A session in front of 750 people.
Wow. The thing in life that you love the most?
Oh my gosh, Chris. What do I love the most? Right now, it's my free schedule.
Oh, I can relate to that one. And in life, what do you dislike the most?
Debbie Downers.
I'm with you. And what do you love most about our industry?
The spark, the always having cash to buy a drink, the upbeat vibe of the beauty biz.
And what do you dislike about it?
How disappointing leadership is with big brands.
A living person that you admire the most?
I think right now I would say my older sister.
Was that the one that got you into the beauty business, or
no? That's the middle girl, as we called her.
The middle girl. I'm hesitating now because I want to ask you why, but I think I don't want to put you on the spot if it is.
Why I admire her?
Yeah.
Her strength of character has stepped up in the face of tremendous adversity, disappointment, and kind of fucked up life stuff.
Gotcha. Person that you wish you could meet, living or dead?
Two come to mind. One would be King Tut, and the second would be Michelangelo, because I would just like to have a job shadow day and see what that was like. That guy sculpted, architecture, surgery, cadavers, painting. I think it'd be fascinating to job shadow for a while.
That's amazing. Something that people don't know about you.
I write poetry.
I didn't know that. Well, there you go. That's amazing. You shouldn't have. There's a songwriting job in there somewhere. I can see it coming. A month off. Where would you go? What would you do?
I have a fantasy of just doing like a European travel. I have a friend who runs a tennis camp somewhere in Tuscany, and I think that would be a fun 2 weeks, and then just go and see what else is available.
And I understand that's your new hobby as well right now, isn't it? Is tennis
Oh my God. We play tennis in Palm Springs. I kicked Lee's ass. Don't tell him.
He's listening.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, tennis is for sure fun. I lost weight. My cardio came up. My spirit came up. But my buddy that I was playing with left LA, so it's been a little far and few between playing right now.
Well, good luck with your game. Your greatest fear?
Sickness.
Favorite curse word?
Honest to God.
Honest to God? I love it. It's different than what some people say on here. Favorite comfort food?
This is an Eastern European thing. I'd have to say halupki, which is the cabbage, the rolled cabbage with meat and rice and stuff.
Yeah, and Ukrainians, holopchi. That's being Ukrainian. It's been one of my favorite dishes. But nobody can make it like my mom and wife. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
To be, I was going to say less of an empath, but I think that that's a superpower.
Yeah, I agree.
Probably be a little less concerned about other people's opinions of me.
Interesting. I bear that one as well. Your most treasured possession?
I think it would be a Krugerrand gold coin set from South Africa. When I was there teaching, my dad said, "You should bring one back for me." And I did. We had, his name is escaping me, but I know you know him too, in South Africa. And he took my passport and he went to wherever you go, the mint, and he bought me a gold Krugerrand set. And I brought it home and showed my dad, and then immediately put it in a safe box and never gave it to my father.
Oh. I want one day when I'm out there, I want to see it. Something in the industry you haven't done, but you want to.
I would say be head of color for a brand. And that means having serious influence on the marketing, the development, the social media piece, and make sure that there is a strong flavor or vibe that's consistent amongst all of those different departments.
Love it. Okay. One do-over, what would be? And I'm not sure if it's just a Canadian expression. If you could do one thing over in your life, what would it be? And I won't accept that you wouldn't be the person you are if you didn't do the things you did. But if you had one do-over, what would it be?
Go to college.
And take what?
I don't know, but now that I'm a bit older, I see the value of a 4-year degree. Even if it's never used, it opens doorways differently than what I think I'm involved in right now.
Yeah. Tomorrow, you couldn't do hair. What would you do?
I would book a plane ticket to go see family and friends.
Love it. And sort of just the last question. If you had one wish for our industry, what would it be?
Don't be so quick to fall into myths and gossip and rumors, and to do some of the work yourself, and to not be afraid to charge real money, and don't do any discounts.
Yeah, that's wise stuff there. David, I just want to say thank you so much. And it was a pleasure just to have one of our conversations that I love so much. And thank you for being here and giving up your time.
You're the best, Chris. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you. And listeners, I just want to say if you like what you heard today and you want some more, please show us some love. You can throw out a 5-star rating if you want, especially with David on here. And just like us on our show page for wherever you get your podcasts. And I'm Chris Baran, and this is Headcases.